Good morning or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the Health In Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. Today is July 30th, 2012, and I'm your host, Debby Bruck, founder of HWC, with our co-host, Dr. Deepak Sharma from New Delhi, India. And he runs the Orbits Clinic there and lectures on community medicine. Recently, I have been studying with him about his exams giving to his students, and it's been quite a challenge. You need to know everything about diseases, medicines, epidemics, homeopathy, of course, materia medica, and it's a challenge if you want to become a full-fledged homeopath in India. So we begin another Monday, and we're going to be discussing the issue of grief. And I was just chatting with Dr. Deepak Sharma. He is with us on the line. Hello.
Hello, Debbie. You are saying you said right, because every homeopath is being a good doctor always. He knows everything about the medicine, everything about the pathology, everything about the disease, and already Dr. Henneman put in the organon that we must have the knowledge of disease, knowledge of medicine, and knowledge of pathology also. So we need to know everything.
And you do know everything.
Yes.
So that's why I rely on you. And here we are. We're going to be talking about, I would say, emotional psychology, psychological illness, or in a way, this is just normal. It's not really an illness. When we have grief from a loss, it's natural. We expect it. This is how we go into this process of coping with death in our life until we can recover and come back into the world of the living. Especially if you've lost somebody who's close to you, they really are part of your life, your soul energy. And recently we have had quite a bit of these kinds of shocks in our societies. I just heard about India having a tragic accident with their train and losing 50 of the civilians there. And I'm sure that those families and the friends of families are being touched by that loss. And is that big news there?
Yes. And yesterday evening, in a train accident, over 50 persons were killed in an accident, and there were a big shocking news in India, and many of the families are having grief or disappointed with this accident, because they are faith on the government system that when we are going in the railway or when we are going in the aeroplane, they always think that they are safe. But when they met with the accident, always the family members has disappointed with this system, and there are so many peoples within the grief today. So that was a very bad news for today.
Right. And you mentioned a couple of items that we're going to touch upon: feeling secure in your world, feeling that you can depend upon something in your environment or your government or your family or even yourself. And so these are kinds of things that are interrelated with the grief itself, or even depending upon God if you're a spiritual person. We also had in America another loss, which was the Aurora, Colorado incident. Many people from all over the country watched and heard all of the news articles on the media. And this is the thing about the media today, is we're constantly seeing these images, and they're repeating over and over again, no matter what radio station, what television channel, in the news, wherever you're on the internet, on Twitter, it spreads like wildfire. And so people can all be affected, not only individually in your family, friends, but communally in the society as a whole. And so we're going to be talking about homeopathic remedies that deal with grief and loss. In those cases, there really was a great shock to the system. In the same way that last week we spoke with Andrea Brasilio, who was put in a state of shock due to hearing about her mother's suicide, and that was a great loss for her. So, do you want to make a comment about all of these
Yes.
kinds of things?
And yes, I want to comment it. And first, we are defining the grief. Basically, what is the grief? It is a basic emotional changes in every human being and every animal also. If you are talking about the chemical reactions during the changes of disappointment and during the grief, the psychologist says that there is some kind of neurochemical changes are done in our nervous system, and that leads to the grief or depression. But the starting of grief always start with the disappointment. When we are thinking about the repeated disappointments or the repeated thoughts with that disappointment, that will convert into the grief. So there is a difference between disappointment and grief, as I told, and we are explaining through a homeopathy. And there are so many medicine in homeopathy which are act best on the position, like that. When we are talking about the modern medicine, they have a limited medication on the grief. But when we are talking about the homeopathy, there are so many medicine. I told around 366 remedies listed in for the grief. And today, when I studied the repertory, there are many symptoms, like when we got any elements from the silent grief. Silent grief is that grief in which the person is silent and thinking more and more about that disappointment or the causes. Like when Andrea on the last show talking about the suicide of her mother. So the grief is converted because she is constantly thinking on that. She is constantly thinking that why my mother suicided, or why it happened to me. So when we are constantly thinking about the bad things, they convert into the grief. And when we are not expressing this grief, that is called the silent grief. And when we are talking about the medicines of the silent grief, there is always like ignitia is there, lycopodium is there, natrum mur is there, and colchicum is the medicines for the silent grief.
Colchicum?
And colchicum, yes, colchicum is also a medicine for silent grief. And these medicine are affected when any elements mean the disease is come from the silent grief. Like when we get abdominal discomfort and had a history of silent grief, then the ignitia or lycopodium or phosphorus work. That is the basic quality of homeopathy. And when we are talking about the next symptom, that is a cheerfulness alternating with grief. A person is feeling a grief, but in a next phase, he is cheerful. He is laughing a lot, and within a second, he converts into a grief. Then the medicine is calcareous sulf, graphitis, and opium. That is the greatness of homeopathy. Then when every position have a different medicines. When and other thing are that the grief, if we are talking about the delusion, grief waited upon him a grief, meaning a grief waited upon him. A grief is more severe and always think that I am feeling heaviness in the head, I am feeling weighted, and I am feeling very burden about this grief, but it is a delusion, not exactly. Then the medicine is ammonium mure and conium.
Can
That
can
is a
you
different thing.
explain to
Yes,
us
yes,
the difference you say between a delusion and
yes,
reality?
yes. I'm explaining about that. A
Okay.
person have a delusion, not in reality. Person have a delusion that I am in grief.
Okay.
I am grief and I am feeling headache and I will not do anything. I will not do work. I will not do my complete my work. That is the only delusion. There is no history of any disappointment. There is no history of any grief. There is no history of mishappening to the patient. But he has a delusion or she has a delusion about that I am having grief, and this grief is causes my headache. This grief is causes my weakness. This grief will not uh, uh, will stop my working of daily routine. Then the medicine is conium. Conium is best
Interesting.
thing. I tried many time. I did not try any time ammonium mure, but conium is always work.
So, grief, that is a delusion. So, would these remedies, ammonium mure and conium, not work for a person who has a true grief, a real grief? I
Yes,
mean,
yes, yes, exactly.
okay.
The person have not real grief. It's a delusion of the mind.
Hmm.
There is no history of any mishappening. There is no history of disappointment, but he is feeling that I am in grief. He
W-
also don't do not know about that why I am grief, but so
Do,
this is a delusion.
do we need an explanation for why they would imagine that, that they are feeling this way?
Yes, yes, yes. This is in this case, I maximum found the family history of depressions,
Okay.
family history of depressions, or where where the person is mostly living with the depressive patients.
Okay, so people might be living with another person who's depressed, or I was just an idea came into my mind that, let's say, parents or grandparents, let's say they lived through the Holocaust or they lived through something very traumatic in the other people in the family did, and they take that grief onto themselves. Is that a way that that could happen?
Yes, yes, exactly. And I had an example of one boy. Is he is about 16-year-old, and I had taken. He came for me with some another complaint like headache, I think. But when I was taken the history, I got that he said that my mother is always sad. he she did not cheerful. She's always complaining about and negative things. She has negative thoughts always, and I do not like. So I inquire about her uh, delusions, and then I got that that he is all some many time thinking that I am in grief. I am also a sad person. So he did not have any kind of mishappening with them, but had a history of family depressions.
So I would say that that is something that is happening to him. In my mind, I mean, not directly that he didn't lose a loved one, but in a way he is being affected by the energy of that other person because he's surrounded by constantly this depression, so he's feeling it.
Yes, that is called the aura within our environment that is always affected. And when we are talking about the next symptom of the repertory, I got the fits of grief.
Okay, before you get to the fits of grief, we have a question in the chat that's asking if homeopaths use other complementary healing methods besides the homeopathic remedies to deal with the grief. I would
Yes,
imagine
exactly.
partially just having the conversation, the consultation is cathartic and healing when a person can open up. But do you have any other
Yes,
things? Okay.
without consultation or counseling, you cannot treat the psychiatric patient or the patient with the grief. A good counseling is always be done with a grief patient, and I always suggest to do meditation to the front, and for the I always advise a yoga therapy for all psychiatric patient and who is in grief or who is in depression. I always advise the yoga and meditation.
We know that moving the body and exercise is very uplifting and healing, getting out into the sunshine, socializing with other people, being in contact with other people in your community, being with friends. And we're going to get into the idea of comfort, people who like to be comforted and people who don't like consolation. But why don't you go ahead and continue with the next line of thought that you were saying, grief and fits of grief.
Fits of grief. Yes, exactly. It's the fits of grief, meaning that a person have a grief for few minutes, that he is thinking, oh, I will suicide. I am very sad. And on the next minute, he is good. He is feeling good. This is not always cheerness alternate with grief. This is not that. The fits of grief is when a person is coming with the minutes of attack of the grief. That is called the fits. The rubric is coming from the convulsions. That the convulsion is always
convulsion
for a time being. Convulsion is for a time being. So that so grief is also he is always explaining about like the convulsion, that grief comes and goes into a minute. Grief comes and goes to in a minute. He always all right, think all positively, but for a minute he thinks that I am not a good person. I am a sad person, or I will suicide it, or so many negative thinkings. And the medicine is asafoetida.
Asafoetida.
Yes.
Okay.
That is the single remedy listed in the
which
whole
is
repertory.
this fits, and it sounds like this is for convulsions. Would it be a good remedy for epileptic fits as well?
No, not epileptic fit.
No.
But I did the comparison with the fits and convulsion. Like that, the convulsion is coming for a minute and goes again in few minutes. Like that, the grief is come for few minutes and then again goes.
Okay.
Like a convulsion.
I want to continue this line of thought, but we do have a caller on the line, so we're going to welcome whoever's calling in and ask them to turn the sound off of their browser and just listen via the Skype call. Hello, welcome from the Health In Show. Who's there?
Hi, Debbie. It's Mary Ellen Turner from Colorado.
Hi, thanks for calling in today. Did you have some comments?
Well, my thought was that we know in homeopathy, if we don't take care of the acute, it many times develops into a chronic, as with, say, Ignatia moving into Nat Mur. But I live near Aurora, and everybody is affected, not just here in Colorado, but energetically, maybe because we're at the epicenter, we're closer. And remedies I was thinking of, besides the first dose of aconite, just for the shock of it, would be war remedies, like the Papirovaceae, or like opium or stramonium if people are having nightmares, or I just, actually the first case out of school was a woman I treated who had horrible eczema.
Mm-hmm.
And came to find out I treated it with all kinds of skin remedies and finally said, when did this happen? 5 years ago. What happened 5 years ago? And come to find that her mother died. And she'd never gotten over it. And a dose of net myrrh cleared everything.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So this is really important because in truth, we are in this place of feeling insecure, having attacks that are coming out of nowhere, shocks. I was reading a lot of the comments, and I put it on the Homeopathy World Community blog page for this event today. Some of the news media and responses of those people living there. Nightmare is a big word that comes up. This is a living nightmare.
And it is, and it's like it was as if there was a small war.
Absolutely.
In the movie theater.
Absolutely. So this would be sort of like PTSD, like post-traumatic stress.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
You know, these events affect everybody. First off, we've had the financial crisis, followed by an event like this. People are feeling very insecure. They might go into an arsenicum state.
Okay. Maybe you want to explain to people, because this is open to the world, this show. It's not just to homeopaths. And when we mention remedies, we want them to understand what we're talking about. So arsenicum is a person who is fearful. Feeling
very insecure, worried about money, overwhelmed with states of vulnerability.
Restless.
Fear for his own well-being and material well-being.
You see them as jittery, nervous, restless, and desiring comfort, desiring consolation, would you say? And
I would, yeah. Nat Murr would rather tuck off by themselves somewhere and just go to bed or read a book, but arsenicum needs a lot of reassurance.
Right. And arsenicum also likes little sips of water, so you'll see them carrying around their water bottle.
Right.
And whereas Natrimura might be desiring to eat lots of potato chips or something that's crunchy and salty, and that comforts them.
Exactly.
So, Dr. Deepak Sharma, do you have a comment about this discussion where we're going into this deep type of grief?
Yes, basically when we are considering about the grief, maximum homeopath thinking about the remedy ignition, natramure, arsenic, aconite. But when we had a specific symptom, then always a specific remedy. Arsenic album is really good remedy to rule out the grief. And the one of the character of arsenic is grief from insanity or madness. Grief from insanity is a characteristic of arsenic and belladonna. Is the specific grief of arsenic.
Mm-hmm. So they're thinking that they're going crazy, or something has shoved them into this mental delusion, or what? How do you explain?
Yes, I am explaining about that insanity or madness. When this is the example of person when those are behaving like a mad. He is crying aloud, he is sparkling aloud, he is hitting someone, and after that episode he goes in a grief that what I did, so what I hurt to anyone. That is a grief of arsenic album or belladonna.
So how will we differentiate between the arsenic album type of a madness, insanity, grief, and one of belladonna, which is also pretty sudden?
Yes, basically arsenic album patient is a lean and thin patient, and belladonna is a fatty patient. Always be there. Belladonna is present with a headache or redness of the face. When the person is in madness, the face is always red. Where the arsenic album is a restless patient, he move here and there. He always drink a water, take a glass of water and take a sip only, and then throw out. That is the arsenic album, and it differentiate. Basically, the belladonna face is always charming. He flushes the face, and when he got a madness or a point of grief, he always got a redness on the face. That is the quality of belladonna on every symptom. When you got a physical journal aggravated by her redness of face, the all belladonna always works.
And they're usually not thirsty. Is that
Not
correct?
thirsty, yes.
Not thirsty for belladonna, and also their skin is pretty dry, I imagine, most of the time, unless because when it goes into the chronic of belladonna, it turns into calcarea carbonicum, which is a sweaty person. I may be incorrect on that.
Yeah, I did not see any dry skin on the belladonna.
Okay.
In my but that is flushing face always. I did not found any dry skin in belladonna.
So Mary Ellen, you're right. Those two remedies would handle the acute, immediate situation at the time of the accident. Are you still with us?
I'm sorry, I just had someone at the door.
That's okay.
You could repeat that?
Yeah, I was just saying that belladonna and arsenicum would cover the immediacy of the event, and then there would be other remedies for long-term chronic conditions of grief if they have not been cared for homeopathically and were not able to recover out of that state themselves.
Yes, and many times, because we live in a society where we are told to just buck up and get over it, we had 4 days of no politics, and then everything was, off to the Olympics.
Yes.
And if it isn't processed, it could go into a chronic disease or to a genus epidemicus for a flu outbreak or some sort of, wouldn't be surprised to have some sort of an epidemic as and the event being the genus epidemicus, whether it is a stramonium state or a Staphylococcus aureus or a phosphoric acid, where it's usually for the death of a friend. There's an unequal struggle. You go into a collapse state where you feel emotionally dead inside. Maybe an outbreak of chronic fatigue as something that is experienced by the larger population.
That's a fascinating line of thought. What do you make of this, Dr. Sharma?
What the line of fascinating?
Yeah, she was saying that if we don't have time to recover from the acute shock and attack, the components of loss of friends, family, people in our society, and we move directly into a new emotional phase. This pumping up for the Olympics and other things in life that we have to keep going on, and we don't really deal inside with this grief, then she says it could result in an epidemic outbreak in the community as, let's say, a flu or chronic fatigue, where the people actually lose their energy and have to struggle to recover from that physical ailment. What do you think about that line of thought?
Yes, basically, she's telling true. When we are not working any type of epidemiology of grief till end, but it is a very nice time to study about the grief in players who are playing in the Olympics. And when we are talking this kind of medicine, the I think Arnika should be best. It may
Arna,
be
I
hurting.
don't think you're saying about the people in the Olympics who lose their status, or they're not like, who was it, the person that we were just mentioning, Jordan Weber, who lost her status as part of the team. That's an individual, but I'm talking about us as a society, us as a total community, when we're not coping and dealing directly with the acute grief. It can go into either long-term chronic grief, or she is indicating possibly some sort of a contagious disease, an epidemic that occurs in the energy of society that brings us down back into kind of a weakened state.
Yes. Yes, but I didn't think that I did not read any type of epidemiological data on the grief.
Okay.
I did not get any data.
Okay.
And I think nobody is working on that point of view. But if you are thinking about the Olympic players as an epidemic, then Arnica or Natrum Self will be the best medicine for the grief.
Can you please explain that? Yeah. Arnica and natrum sulf for the Olympic members, the team members?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Basically, every player is always have a physical injury, and that leads to a mental stress. And on the mental stress and mental grief after a physical injury, there is a only medicine, that is natrum sulf, that is working on the concussion of brain. And natrum group is also a good group for the grief. So I think Arnica and natrum sulf will do best for every losers in the Olympic.
Well, I hope they're listening. I hope they're tuning in so that they know how to recover more swiftly. I was looking up also constant and chronic grief, and 2 remedies appeared. That was causticum and graphites. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those 2 remedies?
Yes, causticum and
graphites. Graphite.
Okay. I am explaining first about the causticum. Okay. Causticum is basically a very nice person always. They never complain. They never have any negative thoughts, but they are thinking constantly in the mind. They never express his idea, or they never express our those negative feelings, and they never express the grief inside the patient. So causticum is a very nice personality in the world. Opposite then the graphites is angry, and they can express her negative thoughts, and always is the complaining of graphites started with the gastric lesion. Then like he had a constipation, and then development of the grief. So there is a difference of causticum and graphites. Causticum is very nice, and graphites is always an anger patient.
Well, what else do we know about causticum? They are rebels, fighters. They want the world to be a better place. What are the physical symptoms that we might see? I mean, do we look for people who weep, who cry tearfully, who mourn and feel sad? Or how would we recognize this causticum besides that just they're a nice personality?
Yes. When we are talking about the causticum is in the first consultation, we never recognize the causticum and pulsatilla. That is, my professor said always, you cannot recognize the causticum and pulsatilla on the first visit.
Okay.
When we are talking constantly or on the recurrent, on the repeated consultations, you know more about her nature, or more about her emotions, and we always get the causticum patient is very highly emotional, but he never expressed. So causticum is silent in nature. He never complaining, he never exposing her negative thoughts, but he constantly think inside the complaint. Whereas when we are talking about the having
Pulsatilla?
pulsatilla is constantly thinking, but she weeps easily, while the causticum never weeps. And when we are talking about the
Oh,
graphitis is a type of philosophical patient. He talking more and more about his thoughts. He's having the gastric complaints. He's having the much and much anger. So there is a difference between Pulsatilla causticum and graphitis.
I also think about causticum as having such a great shock that they become paralyzed in their actual physical body. Would they also be paralyzed in their ability to function and move in the world?
Yes, causticum is always paralyzed and causticum is always getting a nervous weakness. Maximum type of paralytic patients are uh, causticum or thuja.
Thuja also?
I
Okay, Thuja. So both of those
TH
are like similar.
similar.
Okay.
Both are the antipsychotic remedies, and causticum by the nature is very good personality, and we are having the paralysis starting from the right eye.
The right
I
eye?
recognize right eye, and when we are recognize the causticum patient with small warts on the right side of and upper eyelid of the right side. So
Okay, so warts
from that
and the
we
eye parallels.
warts on the upper lid of right eye. That is a significant symptom of the causticum. You can recognize on the first visit also.
Okay,
That,
and then Thuja also is known to have growths, condylomata, and warts. So that is a
yes,
signal. And so a Thuja could be a person who is also in a state of grief?
yes. Maximum time when I see the condylomata or warts on the face, the medicine are probably the thuja, causticum, nitric acid, and medullinarum, and they always have a different kind of grief. The when we are going, I am seeing the warts on right side of face. That is, it may be the causticum, it may be the calcireca, when both have the grief. And on the left side there is a acid nitric, and thuja is the medicine. They also have a different type of grief.
Interesting. So our bodies exhibit and start to show signs of our inner grief, our emotions, and what we're trying to struggle and cope with in our life. And we can actually see that on our face, also in our body, probably in our posture. You know, if you're stooped over and a lot of different ways, your facial expression, and also things that are changing on you. I also found a good number of remedies under the repertory rubric of prolonged and unresolved grief. And under those is carcinosin, causticum again, gelsemium, which is also good for influenza and droopiness. Ignatia is in bold. Calibrome, lachesis, which we talked about on our first show of snakes, Nature muriaticum for chronic grief, phosphoric acid, and thulium mur. I would really like to hear a little bit more about the phosphoricum acid if you have some information about that, because on the networks, on Homeopathy World Community on Facebook and other networks on Facebook, they've been talking about grief and phosphoric acid.
Yes, basically acid phosphoric grief is always due to the lack of vital fluids.
Lack of vital fluids?
And lack of vital fluid is always like semen. like the leukorrhea, like the salivation from the mouth. These are
Salivation.
the vital salivation is from the mouth. These are the vital liquids, and when we got a history of excessive masturbation or excessive secretion of leukorrhea or excessive this night spermatorrhea. So and the weakness, we found the weakness after this vital fluid loss of vital fluids. The acid force is always work, and in the case then there is a lot history of excessive masturbation and hair falling is there. Acid force always there.
Right. So would you
There
say
is
if somebody is crying and crying and crying, this is the loss of fluid from the body, and this can bring them into this weakened state? Because it's good to cry when you, I mean, it's natural and healthy, and actually our tears have a lot of great bacteria and germicidal properties for healing. So, but if it goes on too long, maybe, and it's prolonged, as it says, prolonged and unresolved, then the phosphoric acid, and we think of this person as being extremely weak, loss of energy, probably they can't get out of bed, can't get to work and function at all in the world.
yes, the main symptom you told, that the weakness after the loss of vital fluids is the basic symptom of phosphoricum acidicum. So phosphoric acid is always work. Many times we are giving in the hair falling acid first, because maximum time the youngsters have did the masturbation and have a history, and the acid force was always work. There is again a medicine of staphysagria. The
Okay.
excessive masturbation causes, but the excessive masturbation in staphysagria is due to the anger. This is due to the feeling of insult in the society. That is the difference between acid force and staphysagria. Staphysagria patient do the masturbation due to the
Are
result
they
of
doing this
insult.
Are they doing this action to comfort themselves, to make themselves
Yeah.
feel more secure, to feel better? I mean, because they're missing something in their life that I mean,
Yes.
they're
Yes.
missing
Exactly.
this love or something that they need, and so they do this activity. And for the staphysagria person who's dealing and coping with grief and loss, there's a tremendous amount of anger that's repressed, that's suppressed, that's not showing to the public, but they have it.
Yes.
I'm like, let's say you're angry with the government for not taking good care of the trains, or you're angry with the government for not keeping a secure theater or airport or whatever it is. And it can happen in your family life if there's an incident. So staphysagria is a very powerful and important remedy for homeopaths. And the other one was the phosphoric acid and Natrium muriaticum, which is a deep, I wanted to say that acids themselves are very much related to a depressed state. So when we have this remedy that needs to be used, people usually are quite depressed and unable to function in the world. They have a loss of what they normally were passionate about, and you can see this dullness overtake them.
Yes. Exactly.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about Natrium muriaticum, because it is one of the top remedies?
Yes. When we are talking about the Natrium muriaticum, it always comes from Ignitia. That
Okay.
is the course I always told about the medicines of grief. That is Apis, then Brainia, then Ignitia, then Netramure, Sepia, Pulsatilla, and Legacy.
So there's a series, there's a consecutive series of remedies that are used, that are looked at to,
yes.
Okay.
And the Ignitia is Natrium muriaticum is came from Ignitia. The chronic of Ignitia is a Natrium muriaticum, and the Natrium muriaticum patient is always thin, with a thin neck, extended to have a very, very much flexibility of the neck, have a excessive desire of salts, has always anger, but and the anger always aggravated by the consolation. That is a characteristic of natrium uriticum. When anyone console and the natrium uriticum, he always aggravated it, always aggravate the condition by consolation.
So
That is the natrium uriticum.
when a person is, you say, aggravated or worsened by consolation, how would we know? How could we tell? What behavior would they have that would indicate to us, don't try and
Yes.
give them a hug. Don't try and say things will be better.
I always ask patient that how much you are anger in a day, and the patient is told us that I am angry at least once in a day.
Okay.
So and my next question is, do you feel better when anyone console you? So he always told that no, I do not want anyone. I need to uh, alone myself. When anyone console me, I my conditions are always aggravated. I got a more anger when anyone console them. That is the symptom patient explained.
So we think of them kind of putting up a barrier in front of themselves to protect themselves or to stay clear of people. And this
Yes,
is,
no,
so
yes.
you see maybe a little hardness or martyrdom, or, I'm a stiff upper lip and I can handle it and don't try and soften up to me kind of
So,
behavior.
but natrium uriticum is weak physically, so he never hurt anyone. He can never hit anyone. That is the next omega. That is the next omega that hit in the anger. But
That
natrium
hits?
that hits.
Who,
Natrium
who, are,
next
who, are,
omega
who
is
are they hitting?
next omega. Next omega patient is always hitting during the anger, or when anyone one need to console him, they always hit
Who are
the
they hitting? Are they
counselor.
hit who when they hit? Who are they? Are they banging a book? Are they throwing something? Are they hitting themselves? Are they hitting? Who are they hitting? Or is it you're saying a kid when a kid is in a state of grief, or would an adult? Who would they lash out at? Who would they hit?
Sorry, Devi. The voice is not clear.
Oh, okay. So I'm asking. You're saying the person who could use Nux vomica to help calm their nerves and feel better in this state of grief that has turned into anger. How who are they going to be hitting? Are they going to start a fight? What's going to happen?
Basically, the nux vomica patient is always the angry patient.
Uh-huh.
Angry for the angry patient, nux vomica is the first medicine, and the anger of nux vomica is so crude that when anybody need to console him,
Okay.
he always hit
Hmm.
the counselor.
Hits the
Always hit the
counselor.
counselor. Yes.
Whoa. Oh,
Yes,
we got to
always
be
hit.
careful.
He can hit the counselor, or if he cannot do this thing, he just put a mobile phone or the things on the table and hit on the wall
Hits the
of
wall.
the chamber.
Wow.
Yes, that is the nux vomica. But Natremure is a physically weak patient. He never did this type,
Uh-huh.
and basically Natremure is so intelligent.
But we think about Ignatia, the first line of homeopathic remedy for an acute grief. Nux vomica is a plant cousin of Ignatia. So I don't usually think of Nux vomica as a remedy for a state of grief, but in a way, you're explaining that the person who is very passionate to the point of this extreme anger and demonstrable, whatever the word is, they are really showing that deep inside they are hurt. So this is very interesting because I would not think about Nux vomica as being a remedy for grief. Although I'm looking here under the repertory, it says mind ailments from anger with silent grief. So you started out with silent grief, and we have the top remedies being aconite, bryonia, ignatia, lycopodium, staphylos aureus. And then we also have more. This is quite a long list: chamomilla, china, cocculus, colocynth, gelsemium, nature mure, phosphoric acid, and zinc. Now, Nux vomica is listed, but it is not as highly rated as all of those other remedies for mind, anger, ailments from grief with silent grief, which is quite a complex combination of emotions.
Yes, but I told about the different type of Nux vomica is different. Nux vomica is an anger patient. He's
just generally angry.
Generally angry.
Whether or not he has grief.
All the symptoms are aggravated by the anger. His grief is also aggravated by the anger. And Nux vomica is listed on the 3rd grade, but I always got a result from the Nux vomica very well.
So you would make it a bold in your book. So we did cover in the last show about aconite for that shock. Bryonia, we didn't talk too much about it, but you did mention it today as an important remedy. How would we recognize that?
Yes, basically aconite, grief is very sudden in nature, and aconite is always a thirsty patient. He drinks a lot of water, and aconite grief got a very shock in a shock region that you had a news that your family got an accident, and you just fall on the wall. That is the grief of aconite. You got a sudden complaints after a sudden shock of the news. Then the aconite always work. Aconite and ignatia.
And they say, I feel like I'm going to die.
Yes.
So that is aconite, and a pair with that would be the gelsemium, because they also have this a worse from bad news. So if somebody's calling you up on the phone and has to deliver some bad news, you can go into a state of gelsemium, which is also excellent for influenza, where your face is completely droopy, your eyes are droopy and glazed over, and this is a pretty bad state of being. Okay.
Yes, gelsemium is always have a feeling of weakness all the time. Feeling of not being able to cope with daily life. Desire to be quiet, to be left alone, avoid people and distress of life, and he always has a fear in mind that he cannot do anything. That is a gelsemium, and he is less thirsty. And gelsemium has a mental weakness also.
Right, and Kavitha, who is Dr. Kavitha Kukanor in the chat, has mentioned, she says Nux vomica hits in anger on the person. Gelsemium is thirstless. We mentioned that. And also, I have taken plenty of gelsemium in my day, just anticipation, going on an airplane, going to the dentist, any kind of anxiety. It is a really good. So we didn't really put together the grief with anxiety, because there's a lot of that, because of that loss of security, that comfort zone that you might normally have in your day-to-day life. When things are, when you get the news and there is a grief, your whole world shatters. It's death that has put you into a dark, deep place. And the homeopathic remedies help to revive us slowly. We need to come back. It's something that through being in society with others, they can slowly bring us back. It's not something that is easy. Let's see. Melon on the chat is saying Gelsemium feels as if they are going to die, and they're either going to be okay or they're resigned to it. That is very interesting. Thank you. We mentioned also Staphylococcus aureus for this anger emotion, but the other remedy, which was also listed in that long list I did, was colocynthis, which is a bitter cucumber, and that remedy also is listed under grief with indignation. So do you want to tell us a little drop about the colocynth, and then we're just about ending our hour. We've learned so much together.
Yes. The colocynth is basically acute remedy, and it's a restless feeling. He always feeling that he's a sufferer. The basic complaint of colocynth is started with the stomach.
The stomach.
The stomach, and the colocynth are always reserved in nature, has a strong opinions, has always aggravated by the contradictions. They never like contradictions. And he's irritable, humiliated from small things, easily offended. That is the characteristic of colocynth.
Mary Ellen, if you're still on the line and still listening, I did want to thank you. No, she's not with us. Okay.
That's
Oh, okay. So I was going to also mention that there is hysteria with after grief. We also have the number one remedy, Ignatia. The second is Gelsemium, and there's another one called Baryta sulf. So we can see that, there are 366, did we say, remedies?
Yes, 366, and I never use the Baryta sulf.
Never use the Baryta carb.
But I will do.
So we could probably talk about the issue of grief because it's blended with so many other emotions and coping mechanisms that humans have. It's very individualized medicine. Homeopathy addresses you as an individual and your lifestyle, your personality, your history, things that trigger your body to change. And so therefore it's very complex, and it's very a good idea to see a professional homeopath. Getting onto antidepressant drugs is not going to really resolve the deep-rooted grief that you might have. And I'd advise you or recommend that you take a look at the website, the Homeopathy World Community, about today's talk, because there's a lot more information from the way that we deal naturally with grief, the 5 states of being, how we come to the word acceptance. And a lot of these stories that we've been listening to from the people who have been affected by the tragedies say that they never do recover. And this is really sad. Homeopathy could help them. Dr. Deepak Sharma, I'm so pleased that you were able to have electricity today from the blackout that India was dealing with, and that you're on the show and full of information to help us and stories. I want to thank those folks who call in and who are on the live chat, who share these important messages on Twitter and Facebook and other social networks. I didn't even thank Amnon today. And
you're welcome.
I didn't even introduce you. I hope it was an interesting show.
Very.
Yes.
Yeah, we do a lot of talking even before the show, and learn stuff too. What are we having next week? Next week we're having something special. Go ahead and tell us what you were going to say.
Yes, I always told my patient on the first visit that if you have any disease, means you have any disturbance in your easiness, there is a cause. Find the cause and treat them. If you did not find the cause, you never cure them, you just suppress them, and like the modern medicine. But if you got the cause, you always cure them. So I always told, on the first visit of patient, you just shared with me and you just told everything about you, then I will treat you. So that is the basic theme of homeopathy, and it is the only power of homeopathy, and it is available on in the world. And homeopathy is the only medicine that covers all the symptoms, all the causes. It counts everything.
So you know that it's going to take a long time to take your history and do a consultation and get all that information. And then the homeopath spends hours, unless they're like Dr. Sharma, who probably knows right off what the remedy is. But people like me, I really do an investigation and try and find the best matching energy. So I want to thank you. I want to thank our listeners. I want to tell everyone, besides gratitude, that we love you. We're sending love energy, which is the greatest healer in the world, to you, and know that people care about you. And what else can I tell you? I want to say that next week we're going to have a special show. I'm going to be talking with, who's my guest? I have to look it up because I don't remember. But you know what? It's going to be a special show because it's going to be on Thursday at in the afternoon at 1:30 U.S. Eastern Time with, I'll tell you in 1 second because I'm blanking out on it. Well, you know what? You're just going to have to tune in.
On the next Monday, you will rebroadcast, I think.
What is that? I didn't even write her name on here. Okay, well, guess what? It's going to be good. And then we're going to have Joette Calabrese after that. So teaching mothers how to become aware. And I apologize that I can't remember your name. But you're going to see her live, and I'm going to be right next to her talking to her. So that's it, folks. We're just now waiting for Amnon to sign us off, but he's had a lot of dogs barking and doorbells ringing and things happening in the studio, so
I was trying to find her name.
it's okay. We're going to go.
We all want to thank Amnon.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like what Rob's saying.
What is he saying?
Do a show about happy.
We need a show about happy and a show about memory.
Okay, that's really nice topic.
Memory.
And knowledge, memory.
All right.
Okay, folks. We're signing out. Over and Roger.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Sundays 9 a.m. to noon. Health In with Debby Bruck, Mondays 11 a.m. till noon. The Scope of Things with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays 7 to 8 p.m. Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays 8 to 9 p.m. Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, Wednesdays 8 to 9 p.m. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com.